Welcome to Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vesh, your host, founder and CEO of BoostSolo. And today I'm really excited to have Lane Dockstader with me, who is a LinkedIn coach and Be Connected expert. So Lane, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate that.
Well, I'm excited for our conversation because I know you've sort of taken a few twists and turns in your career and in terms of where you are today. So let me start by asking you, what inspired you to take the leap into solopreneurship, and especially moving from what we would probably call more traditional industries to LinkedIn coaching?
Yeah, because I've mostly been in the early on in my career, I was doing call center stuff, and then I mostly did different financial companies. And originally, it was kind of an interesting detour. Originally, I saw this ad on Facebook for a drone business, like a 3-day weekend seminar. Those helicopters about this big, about as big as a basketball, that you fly up in the sky and take pictures and videos. And so I thought, well, that would be interesting to learn that. And so I did that. And originally, this was kind of my first venture out into doing my own thing, being a solopreneur. And I went out and learned in 3 days all about drones and how to start a business. And I started working with real estate agents and took, pictures and videos of their homes. And so that's really my first step into it. The interesting thing was, before that, I didn't really know how to do a Facebook video. I didn't know how to do a YouTube video. But with that drone, I would fly it up and I would hook it to my phone. And what I would do is, a real estate agent had a home showing. And so I would, go on Facebook and YouTube and say, hey, come on down to such and such a place. We have this home we're showing off here. And so I could do advertising, and it was just a lot of fun. I really had a lot of fun with that drone business. But that was kind of my first step into being a solopreneur.
Wow. Okay. So, and you could say your entrepreneurship dreams really took flight, right?
Yes, literally. So if you go on LinkedIn and you see an eagle, and I would literally call my drones, I would call them Eagle 1, Eagle 2, Eagle 3. And so when you go to LinkedIn, you'll see an eagle right on the side of my name. Now, kind of backtrack a little bit. When I first became a financial advisor, I went to work for a company called A.G. Edwards. It was a big 5, investment company. And they had a tradition that when people went to, for training, we went to a week of training, and that training was held in St. Louis. They had a tradition of we were able to have lunch with the CEO.
Okay.
And it was interesting because at the time that I went, there was an outgoing CEO and an ingoing CEO. So our training group was the only one. We actually got to go to 2 lunches because we went with both CEOs. And it was also interesting because the incoming CEO, he's very fresh. And I had just graduated from college not too far before. And so, of course, in business, they have something called a SWOT analysis, where you look at a company, you look at their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats. And I remember asking him this question. I said, so what are your strengths and weaknesses coming into this position as a new CEO? And it was just kind of funny because he didn't like that question very much. He went, well, you know what? I'm not going to answer that question. Next question. And I've thought about that 1,000 times since then. And I've realized what he could have said is, I'm a workaholic. That's my weakness. I need to make sure that I have more balance in my life. Or he could have said 1,000 other things. But he was brand new. I don't blame him for what he did. But it was a learning experience for me because I realized that, hey, if someone asks me a question, even if I don't like the question, I can spin it however I want. But to me, that's basically what that eagle or that drone perspective is kind of a higher perspective. I can rise above the challenges that are going on and see things from that higher perspective.
Yeah, and there was probably a little bit of generational sort of wire crossing there too, right? Because CEOs probably at that time were not used to people sort of walking up to them and asking them questions sort of point blank.
Yeah, especially some brand new, some guy that's in training, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, power to you. Are you sure
Yeah,
you're not a Gen Z in disguise, Lane?
yeah,
So
exactly.
tell me a little bit what happened to the drone business. How did you sort of come back down to earth and onto LinkedIn?
That's a great example. Well, one of the things was it came to a part. It was kind of interesting timing. It was a time that real estate really. There was a time there. I did it for about a year and a half, and about a year in, it was taking off. It was doing really well, but about a year in, it got to the point where the real estate industry was just going gangbusters.
Yeah.
Pretty much any real estate agent could just simply take a picture with their iPhone or whatever phone they had, and they could just post it online and their house would sell the next day, basically. So part of it was a lot of people didn't need me. But the other thing was I found out that a lot of real estate agents were actually really cheap. That,
Right.
if their neighbor kid, if they could pay them, 100 or $200, and I was charging 3 or 4 times that or more, they'd rather pay the neighbor kid. Although, the problem with that is, uh, to fly a drone for any kind of a business, you actually have to have what's called the 107 license, which is basically almost like a pilot's license. It's like a mini pilot's license. You have to go take a test, learn about, the legal part of drones and the rules, like you're not supposed to fly over people or at night, although there is this little window about 30 minutes after dark where you can still kind of get away with it. But after that, you're not supposed to really fly at night without a special exemption. But what I learned was a lot of real estate agents were cheap, and I would tell them, it's kind of like, if you drive around without car insurance, or if you even drove around without a license, you're probably going to be okay until you get pulled over, and then you're in trouble.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing with the drone. You can have your neighbor kid fly the drone, but as soon as that drone goes through someone's window, the problem is now not only do you have the police involved, but now you have the FAA involved, and
Right.
that's a problem. And the kid could be fined $3,000, and that real estate agent could be fined $30,000 or more. And so, yeah, that was basically what I ran into. Is just a lot of people were, real estate was doing well, so they could use their phone, or they just didn't want to pay the extra to have a licensed professional take those photos and videos for them for the most part. And so I learned a lot, and I think going forward in doing a lot of promotion that I do on social media, I learned that was kind of a step in that direction. But that is what took me back to the ground, so to speak. Although my heart will always be in the sky.
Well, yeah, and the FAA might soon be clearing drones for flight, so that dream might still be alive, Lane.
Yes,
Um,
true. I think there can definitely be some potential in the future for that.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
You've had a pretty diverse career, right? You mentioned financial advising. You also dealt with senior benefits, and then you had this drone experience, and now you're a LinkedIn coach. So could you talk a little bit about how these experiences have helped you craft your approach to your personal brand, and what's been the most surprising skill that you've transferred into solopreneurship?
Ultimately, I want to make a difference. It's
Yeah.
it's about it's about reaching across and quote unquote touching at least their heart, touching their mind, making a difference that way. But ultimately, for me, it's about the financial part. It's about abundance, and of course,
Hmm.
abundance can be, financial. It could have to do with money, but it could also do with joy, with friendship, with love, with connections.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that's what I'm about, is making a difference, having my voice, which is interesting because earlier today I was on a Zoom call, and my microphone wasn't working, and it wasn't working very well. And so about 5 minutes at the end had gone by, and it was actually kind of a group setting. And someone said, "Well, we haven't heard from Lane in a while."
Huh.
Well, it's interesting because that flashbacked me back to high school when I was in high school, I was kind of a shy kid.
Yeah.
I would kind of just stay to myself, didn't say a lot. And but my junior year, I took a photography class. Before that, I didn't really consider myself an artist, but I took a photography class. I decided I'm pretty good at photography. My senior year, I was a yearbook photographer. All of a sudden, I became very popular because people wanted their picture taken, and so they said, "Hey, Lane, what's going on?" And then they wanted me to take their picture. But it's funny because the yearbook staff had a picture in the yearbook with kind of like inside jokes of the yearbook staff, and the joke that applied to me was, "Does Lane talk?" I think there were some people that the whole year had gone by, and either they hadn't heard me talk or they barely heard me talk, maybe 10 words. And so it's interesting that I've come this far to where I came from that, that kid at that high school in Texas. I went to high school in Texas, Dallas area, to where now I'm actually a social media influencer.
Yeah.
I have, 5,000 connections on Facebook, 4,000 connections on LinkedIn. I have, a lot of connections on this new platform called Be Connected that I'm sure we'll talk more about. But, it's interesting that I went from this very quiet, shy guy to now many people would call me that social media influencer. So it's kind of interesting how
Yeah,
that's come about.
that is really interesting. And I mean, they say a lot of solopreneurs are introverts, right? Because that's typically sort of the solo journey. I know I am. So how did that transformation happen? Can you talk a little bit about how you went from does he talk at all to actually asking the CEO a bold question in training?
Well, and I guess, every once in a while I had things like that popped up where I just decided, hey, I'm just going to go out there and put myself out there. And that's a great example. So ultimately that's my push, is I want to be at least minimally financially secure. And what I've realized is that in order to do that, I probably need to do something in sales
Right.
if I'm going to really, get to my financial goals. And so I think that's one thing that's really driven me. And plus looking around and seeing that there's so many people that, any one of us can just look around, and we can realize as we look around to people around us, wow, I have a chance to really make an impact or make a difference in these people's lives. And I can't do that by, being that person over in the corner that's not talking.
Right.
That if I'm going to make an impact, if I'm going to change someone's life, I need to make connections with people. I need to, get on a podcast every once in a while, or, just go out of my way to meet someone new and just learn about them. And so,
Yeah.
I think that's really what's pushed me, is really the desire to make a difference and, make an impact in other people's lives.
That's a great reason. And actually, we mentioned it, but I love your title, the Chief Fun Officer. So can you talk a little bit about sort of why you chose this title and how it reflects in your approach to your work and your brand?
Yeah. And again, we're probably going to talk more about Be Connected, but the CEO of Be Connected, her name is Miss Tanya Hoffman. And I hear her often say, she often says, if you're not having fun,
Yeah.
you're not doing it right. And
Yeah.
so, we all know how a day can go where, I remember one time I was working at a call center, and, of course, especially as a call center, and of course, I think I was doing outbound calls. I was doing outbound calls, though, to people that had put in an ad to go to school, basically. And so I would call them and talk them through, do you want to go to school and stuff like that. But one of my coworkers and I was telling him that I'm having a bad day. And we had a conversation about that. And what we decided is there's no reason to have a bad day, really, because
Right.
it's ultimately it's in my choice. It's my
Yeah.
choice if I want to have a bad day. Sure, have a bad minute, have a bad half hour, have a bad hour or two maybe, but why drag it on to have a whole bad day? There's no reason for that. And
Right.
so that's basically what we decided, is there's no there's no reason to have a bad day, no reason to have that kind of, negativity or just drag it on. And so, any one of us, I think, would we rather have a bad day? Would we rather be sad, or would we rather be having fun? And I think most of us, yeah, we're probably going to have those moments, where we just want to curl up in a ball and and maybe not have fun. But ultimately, what do we really want to do? Most people are like that old song, girls just want to have fun. We all want to have fun, guys too, right?
Yeah, and it sounds like you are having fun with what you're doing right now. So,
Yes, definitely having a lot of fun meeting people. The fun thing is when you're on video calls and you're an entrepreneur, especially on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn has 1 billion members on it. They're in 200 some different countries, and so yeah, it's fun to meet people really from around the world, for sure.
true. So we'll get to Be Connected in a minute, but I want to ask you, there are a lot of, it's a pretty crowded field, right? LinkedIn coaching and personal branding. So can you tell me a little bit about how you differentiate yourself in the space?
So I think one of the things that set me apart is AI. Of course, a lot of LinkedIn coaches do use AI too, but that's one of the things that sets me apart. And then I try to do things a little bit different. I look at things like on LinkedIn, and I think, that's kind of boring.
Hmm.
And so I think, I don't want my post to be boring. If anything, even if it doesn't relate to people, or even if it doesn't, uh, even if it's, some people will like this and some people won't. I want to. One of my goals is I want to stand out
Yeah. Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and so that's what I work on, and that's what I strive to do. And then I really work to work one on one with people.
Hmm.
It's one of the things that I do, and so I really look at their situation, put myself in their shoes,
Right.
because I think most of us, sometimes we look at people and they do crazy or weird things sometimes, and there are some definitely some interesting people in the world, but I think most of us, if we were put in the shoes of that other person, I think 9 times out of 10 we would probably do the same thing they do. And so, or at least it definitely helps me to understand that other person when I put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I do. And then I often tell my clients that everyone's favorite radio station is WIIFM. In other words, what's in it for me?
Right.
And that's what we all want to know. We unfortunately, we all care about ourselves more than the other person. But in doing so, I mean, one nice thing about business and entrepreneurship is, in order for me to get what I want, I need to help you to get what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the higher purpose and higher service of that. But yeah, and
Yeah.
so I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes and look at it from their perspective and find out what is in it for them, and then kind of go from there.
That's great because you're balancing the scale there, right? Because AI is all about automation and can be very cold and not human, and then you've got empathy, and I think you really need both of those things really to succeed, and especially as we move forward. So let me ask you now, as you work with these clients of yours, what are some of the most common mistakes you see professionals make when they're trying to build their brand on or narrative on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think one of the things is they're too generic. I have this thing and I want to sell it to everybody.
Right.
And so I think it is important to niche down, and to, as we're doing a post, to write that post as if you want to niche it down so much that you almost put a name to who it is, like, David or Nancy or whoever your, what they call ICP, ideal client persona, or that whoever that target market is.
Yeah.
You almost, you don't really want to use their name, but you almost want to use their name in being that specific in writing your post. And so I think that's one thing that I help people with, is look at it, let's go from trying to sell to everybody, because we know that, if we try to sell to everyone, then no one's gonna take, be improved with our offer. So, narrow that down. And then be very specific of what our goals are. Take it down. Okay, what I talk to people about their goals. What are your goals? And then let's narrow that down, and then let's build a bridge. Let's look at the steps to really get from where you are now, from point A to point Z. And then the other thing is really one of my focuses is on a LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
Because within a matter of seconds, as someone looks at your profile, they're going to decide, is this someone that I want to learn more about? Am I going to continue to read down their profile, or are they just going to click next? I mean, if you think of yourself, let's say that you are a recruiter and you were hiring someone, pretty quickly, you would probably have a stack of 100 resumes.
Right.
And so you would almost of necessity, you would need to be able to decide within a matter of seconds, maybe 8 to 10 seconds, as you look through each resume, you would decide in 8 to 10 seconds, am I going to put this in the not interested pile or the interested pile, that I at least want to find out more about these people? Yeah. And so whether we do this consciously or subconsciously, whenever we look at a LinkedIn profile, whatever our purpose is, maybe we're a recruiter, maybe we're trying to promote our own business, maybe we are searching for whatever business someone else has, whether it's conscious or not, we do look at a profile, and in a matter of seconds, we decide, is this someone that I want to learn about or not? And so the three main things that I talk to people about is really dial in your picture, have a really good professional photo of yourself where people can actually see your eyes, because they want, in order to connect with you, they really need to see your eyes. Also your banner, your background picture, you want to have that grab their attention. And then your title, whatever you want to say about yourself, have that title. And if you, once you really have dialed those three things in, once the right person looks at your profile, the right potential customer, they're going to naturally want to learn more about you. Then they're going to go down. Then you have the about section. That's a chance for you really to tell your story. Now, most people just want to tell their story, like their whole life, career history. They want to put in that. This is the mistake that many people have or make. Yeah. They try to put their whole life story in that about section, but really that's not what it's about. Yes, people want to know your story, but they want to know your story, again, back to the WIIFM of your story. What's in it for me? How are you going to help me? That's the story that they want to hear. And so I recommend write a good story that applies to your perfect client or customer. And then at the very bottom, put in a good solid call to action. In other words, decide, how do you want to be contacted by your customer? Do you want them to go to your website? Do you want them to send you a message? Do you want them to send you an email? Whatever it is, whatever your preferred method of contact is, put a good strong call to action at the bottom of your about section, inviting them to contact you that way. Go to your website or whatever it is. So, so that's
I love
what
that. That's great advice. And I remember an old line with that Proctor's Head and Shoulders once had. It was, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yes.
He literally said that, right? It's like you understand your audience, build your message to resonate with that audience. And that's the advice I would give too. So that's really great advice. Yeah.
And so many people, if you look on LinkedIn, just as an example, they have that bluish green, that teal background. That's the default, because most of us, when we set up LinkedIn, we're usually doing it for one of two reasons. Either we're looking for a job, and maybe that was 15 years ago and we still haven't changed it, or we start a new business. We know we should do something on LinkedIn, but most people aren't sure what. And so they just choose one of those default backgrounds. And but there's so much of an opportunity. You can put whatever you want there. And so there, it's just, I feel like it's such a lost opportunity if someone just chooses one of those default pictures. So
True. And it's amazing. It's like having your password as your password, right? It's such a simple thing. but it's yeah, I get it. So tell me a little bit about Be Connected. You talked about that a little earlier. Now, how did you get involved with this platform, and can you talk about some strategies that that Be Connect in ways in which Be Connected can help solopreneurs sort of grow their network or um,
So I went to this other networking event, and there was a gentleman by the name of Arlen Denny that popped in, and he mentioned this company Be Connected, and I didn't during his 60-second commercial, of course he didn't have a whole lot of time to explain it. All I really understood of it was something online that can help you with your business. That's really all I understood. But I knew enough about attending these different networking events, whether it was in person or on Zoom. I knew enough to know you don't really sell anything, you don't really promote your business so much in these networking groups, as much as really the secret sauce is the one-to-ones, getting to know people afterwards. It's just kind of like you and I right now. We've had some conversations and some chats online, but now that we're spending more time, we get to learn more about each other. And so I knew that was the secret. And so I invited him to do a one-to-one, and he says, yeah, just here's a link. We can hop on our video call system. And so with Be Connected, I saw the option that you can put in your own colors, you can personalize it, you can put in your own logo, really have a video call system that's your own, that has your own personal style, and you can kind of customize yourself. So that's one of the things that I saw when I first saw Be Connected. The other thing that Be Connected has is 3 buttons on the side of the screen. And so to me, what those buttons were, and you can have those buttons linked to whatever you want. So if you're a solopreneur, let's say you have a book for sale. Mm-hmm. Well, you can have one of those buttons be a link to your book, maybe to your Amazon site, for example, and people could just click on that button and they could order your book right there. Or if you have an online course, someone could just click on that button and sign up for your online course. Or maybe you have a podcast or Facebook or LinkedIn account, whatever it is, there's these buttons on the side of the screen. And to me, when I first saw those, and again, coming from a finance background, financial advisor, tax professional, things like that, to me, what those buttons said was cha-ching, cha-ching, that all I need to do to get a sale is to find out, does someone have a need, get them on a video call, and then if it is a need, and I think that's important. I stress that if there's a need, because I think too often people just try to sell what they're selling,
right,
and they don't take the chance to find out if it would actually help the other person. And if it's not going to help the other person, in my opinion, that's unethical selling. But as long as there is a need and it's something that could help someone, very simple, that someone could just click a button on the side of the screen and take advantage of your offer. And so to me, that's the first thing I saw was Be Connected's right. video call system, with the ability to customize it, personalize it, set it up as your own, but also with 3 buttons on the side of the screen that you can easily, very simply and easily convert a sale once you know that that's something that can help someone, because all you have to do is invite them to the screen. And even if you hopped off, those 3 buttons, it's kind of like a Zoom call, but at the end, you finish the Zoom call, the screen actually stays there, and those buttons are on the side of the side of the room there, so that even if, let's say you're running late and you're finishing up and you say, okay, I do got to go, you can actually set up a button to, say, your Calendly link or something, and someone could set up a follow-up meeting with you another time just by clicking that link. And so it's a social media site. It also has online courses.
It's a competitor to LinkedIn with some more robust tools. So it's sort of got Kajabi. Kajabi, you can host platforms. Courses. But it's built in there. But and the video feature, can you just use that by itself? But you have
yeah. So it's kind of like an ultimate business platform where it has all these things that are really designed for business people. But yeah, you could say it's a competitor of Zoom, but it's much more than that, because it's kind of a competitor of LinkedIn. Now, of course, they would say, we're not saying don't do LinkedIn or Facebook, because that's where the people are. I'm still doing a lot of LinkedIn and Facebook, partly because I know that there's a lot of people on LinkedIn and Facebook that don't know about Be Connected. And so I go where the people are, to let them know about the platform. But yeah, it is kind of it's a competitor of LinkedIn, Facebook, Zoom, Kajabi. It is a competitor of all these things, but not necessarily to replace it, but to use it as a tool, whatever works best, with your business. Right.
Can you share a story or a major challenge that you faced in your entrepreneurial journey and talk about how you overcame that? Because those are lessons that are valuable for, solo journey, solo business people and solopreneurs.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times, just as an example, when I, as a solopreneur, I think it's important that we not only rely on ourselves all the time, right? Because sometimes I do that. I fall in the trap of, well, I'm just going to figure this out on my own, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember, there were people, for example, that wanted to create a LinkedIn banner. And a lot of times I felt like, yeah, I have the creativity to do that. But sometimes I would have questions like, okay, I'm doing this, but how do I do this? How do I do that? And so I think it's important for me to remember to reach out to other people.
Yeah.
Because as some people are very willing to help you. I think so many times I simply ask someone a question and I realize, wow, this person really is almost going out of their way, bending over backwards to help me with this thing. And so I get to remind myself, it's important to ask other people. So that's one of the things I've learned. The other thing is, because a lot of times what I fall into the trap of is if I have a question, I'll go to Google, I'll
Right.
go to YouTube. Now, of course, we have ChatGPT too, that we can ask a question. But those things don't always have an answer. A lot of times it's just good to talk to a real live person, someone that has experience and someone that's been in our shoes before, someone that is a solopreneur. So one of the, I guess, pieces of advice I would offer to any solopreneur is definitely reach out to other people with questions. A lot of times you'd be surprised at the amazing helpful answers that they'll give you. So
Yeah, no, that's great advice, because you're right. We can get lost in our own head, right? Because it is a pretty lonely journey.
definitely.
So let me ask you, Lane, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered?
I think one of the things that I've been reminded recently is decide what's important to you, what your goals are. Because too many times we can get distracted in this life. It's the shiny object syndrome. Sometimes that oh, this is fun. Squirrel. Oh, there's a squirrel over here. We get distracted so many times. And so I think it's important to focus on what's truly important to us and what our goals truly are. And I think you had mentioned Bob Proctor earlier, but I did a training where I watched one of his videos just recently, and he suggested write down your goal and put it in your wallet. Have that goal right in your wallet, and it may even be a good idea to write that goal 2 or 3 times a day, just to remind yourself what you're really, because sometimes I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, I have a full calendar, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm being torn in all these directions. And I think, what am I doing all this for? Right.
Yeah.
And so if I have that goal in my wallet, if I have written it, if I'm in the habit of writing that down 2 or 3 times a day, it's going to keep that top of mind. Now I know what it is that I'm focused on. Also when I see it, I'll recognize it. It's almost like if you get a new car and your car is blue, all of a sudden, as you're driving around, you're realizing, wow, there's a lot of blue cars out here on the road, right? You're noticing all the blue cars. And so as we're focused on our goal, if we have that written in our wallet or our purse, or, if we have written that down 2 or 3 times a day, we're focused on that. We have top of mind awareness. And then I think they call it amygdala, that part of our brain, that subconscious part of our brain, it will pick up on that, and it will create a reality out of our goals and dreams. And so, that's one of the things I've been focusing on recently, and I think that's something that could offer value to other people as well.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. In fact, you might have sort of jumped my last question, which is if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you say to them?
And I would say learn from others and be humble, because it's kind of like, yeah, I was a little bit, you know you could almost say I was a little bit, I think I was innocent enough asking that CEO that question. But I think it's good for any of us to stop and say, okay, what are my strengths? What am I good at? What are my, possibly my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are the things that could potentially be a threat? And so just being real with ourselves, how are things really going? And then, because so many times, someone might ask, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And usually we brush it off. Oh, our typical answer is, oh, I'm doing good. Well, when we're starting off in business, especially people that have tools that could actually make a difference for us, it's probably not the best thing to just fluff that off and say, oh, I'm doing good. But to be real with people. Oh, if it's someone that that you can look up to, and that they offer or have tools that could help you, be real with them. Just say, hey, overall I'm doing good, but here's 3 areas that I'm not doing so good at. What do you suggest? Because when we're vulnerable with people, people actually respect that, and you would be surprised how many people will go out of their way to support you in that area.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, right? Especially for us men, right? Because we think we're supposed to have all the answers, which is not really true. But I love that. I love that advice. So
Very true.
the way I like to end these is to do like a rapid fire round. So I'm
Okay.
just going to throw like 5 questions at you, and just give me whatever comes to your head. So
Okay.
what's the best LinkedIn tip you can give to someone in 10 seconds or less?
Be very clear about what your goal is. Update your profile and speak to your audience.
Great. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Take a risk. Take a risk early on. Don't just be like everybody else. Be an original person, and be original you, and be the authentic you, and take a risk.
I love that. Describe your solopreneur journey in 3 words.
Work, effort, and what's a word for keep on going? Go.
If your entrepreneurial journey was a movie, what genre would it be and who would you play?
Like Indiana Jones meets the 21st century.
That's cool. And I assume you'd play Indiana.
Yeah, of
You'd
course.
play Indy. So what's the most unconventional way you've landed a client?
Unconventional way I've landed a client. Uh bumped into one. Bumped into one.
That's great. All right. Well, those are my questions, Lane. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey. It was a lot of fun listening to your transformations and your transitions and your so reaching for the sky and coming back to earth in a good way.
Yes, definitely. I appreciate that, Nikhil. Appreciate that.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye, everybody.